Within ST, there's basically zero documentation on how key bindings actually work. So today I'm going to have a look at how to actually find what the different keys are called, and then how to actually bind to different actions within the application. So if you're new to the channel, remember to subscribe and ding the little bell icon down below because it'll really help the channel out. I'm aiming for 100 subs by the end of the month, and we're definitely on track to hitting that, so any help would be really appreciated. So now that's out of the way, let's get started. Good afternoon everyone, and welcome back to the channel. So as always, I'm going to assume that you're working within Xorg. If you're working within Wayland, I have no experience with that, so you're going to have to find someone else to help you. So we're going to be using two different programs today. So we're going to use XEV, which is one of the Xorg programs. I think you can download it on Arch with, I think it's P or Pacman, Xorg, XEV, I think that's right. Yeah. And the other one we are going to use is Xmodmap. So the reason I'm doing this is I'll show you what the bindings actually look like for ST if you haven't had a look at them for yourself. So bring up my ST folder, and where you're going to want to look is within the config.h file. And if we jump down to key bindings, so what you're going to look for is this thing that says shortcuts in here. So when you first look at this, it's going to look fairly intimidating because you're not going to really understand what exactly is happening. So you've got four parts to it. You've got this mask, you've got a key sim, you've got a function, and you've got an argument. So two of these are very simple to work out. So this is why we're using these two external programs. So I guess we can start with working out the different masks. So as we can see, the masks are named in a specific way in here. So for the control mask, it's in capitals, and then this term mod is actually a C, what's it called, macro? Yeah, C macro. And that's how it's defined up here. And same with the mod 1 mask, it's named in this specific way. So we can kind of infer what the other ones are called once we work out what they are within Xorg. So if we run Xmodmap, we don't have to really use it for anything. All we're doing is just running it. So this will list out what the different masks on your system are bound to. So you've got the shift mask, you've got lock, control, and then the mod masks. So as we can see from this, there's also a lock mask. So if we were using this within ST, it would probably be named something like, I haven't tested this, so it may not be correct, but I assume it would be named something like this. And as we can see, we've got the shift mask, which is named as such, and presumably the other mod masks would be named something like mod 2 mask or mod 3 mask. But having just that one alt mask there is fine. So that also shows us what the different keys are bound to. So obviously shift is bound to the left shift and the right shift on, I'm not sure what the second part is. I think that's if you hold shift. All we really care about is this left side though. So lock is bound to caps lock. Control is bound to my left control key. Mod 1 is bound to Alt L. Mod 2 is bound to numlock. Mod 3 doesn't have a binding. Mod 4 is bound to Super L, and then Mod 5 is bound to ISO level 3 shift. I can't exactly remember what that key is. I should have probably checked it. Doesn't matter. I think it might be Alt Grave or something like that. I can't remember though. Okay, so for the second part, for the key sims. So this part is pretty much just as easy. So as we can see here, they are also named in a specific way. So they've got this XK underscore and then the name of the key. So XK underscore break, XK underscore C, or capital C. Then it's like that for all of them. So we can then infer what some of the keys are once we know what they're actually called within Xorg. So let's write this out. So XK, and now what are they actually going to be called in Xorg? So I'll bring it up on a second screen, just because it's going to take up a bit. So you can run the program XEV, and basically what that will do, bring up the man page for it. This lets you print the contents of X events. We don't really care about most of the X events, so if we run this, it's going to produce tons and tons of output, but we don't really care about most of that. So there is a script on the Arch Linux wiki that basically will just awk out the stuff that we care about. So I've got that in a script called keys, and basically when we press a key on the keyboard, it'll print out the serial number for that key and also what the name of the key is within Xorg. So if I press Shift L, that's Shift L, Alt Grave, that's called Alt R on my system apparently. tab, and yeah, everything has a name on here. So I just pressed a bunch of keys. As you can see, they all have very simple names. So using that, we can then work out what the name of the key sims we need to enter are. So say we want to use something like, I don't know, actually let's use more interesting key. Let's use something like the print key. So that is just called print. Okay, so from that, let's say we want to, I don't know, just for the sake of testing, we want to, I'll just remove these ones so they don't end up conflicting with it. I'm actually not even sure what these do exactly. I've never used them myself. So let's say we want to change my scroll up binding to print for whatever reason. So if we put in print like this, now we've entered the correct key sim for printing. So what about this function and argument part? So this point is where you're gonna have to start digging through the C code. Okay, so if we bring up another instance of this LF window, go back into my ST folder. So there's two files here you're going to care about. That is the st.c file and the st.h file. So you've got the C file and you've got the header file. So the header file is where all the functions are defined. So if we look for k scroll down, we can see that it's defined in here. And this also brings us to where argument is defined. So it is just called arg in here, and it is a type def union, and then there's a bunch of types in it. I've added this command thing in here. It's not there by default because I needed to actually pass it in for one of the custom functions I've got written. So if you do want to define extra functions, like I've got my exec char one there. So if we look for that, it's right here. So I've got that defined in my header file as well. And then along with that, you have to go and enter the definition. So that will then be put in the C file. So if we look for k scroll down, that is where it's being used. Okay, here's the definition of it. So within the st.c file, all of the functions that you can use are defined in here. The ones that are taking an arg parameter are the ones that are being used within the shortcuts. I don't know if you can use any of the others. If you do want to, I would recommend just putting in a wrapper function, just so you can guarantee that it's going to work. If you wanted to do something like use this tnew function, then you would do void, just to keep it within the same sort of naming brackets, and then you would call tnew and pass in whatever the parameters it needs for it. So you might have to add some more stuff to that arg union that we saw in the header file. So if we continue working with this knew function, what we'd also have to do is, if we go back to my st.h file, then we would have to come down to, it doesn't really matter where you define it, I just like having my stuff defined in a similar section. So we'll come down to where these others are defined. We would put in void knew, then const, I spell it correctly, arg star. If you've never worked with C, you have to define the functions within the header file and then do the actual implementation in the C file. That's why we have to do it like this. And then once that's done, then you can come back over to this other file we have, and you could do, so let's say we want to bind it to our mod key, and we want to bind it on, let's say, we want to bind it on the, I don't know, 8, for whatever reason. You want to have it bound to 8, and then you want to run the function that you are actually using here, so that's knew. Then the last thing we put in is the arguments that we're putting in. So let's say we want to pass in the .i argument, so that's the integer argument, as 1, and the floating point argument as, let's say, 2.2. So assuming that function was actually properly written, then when you press the Alt key, or whatever you've got your mod key bound to, and you press 8, then it would run the knew function and it would pass in the arguments 1 and 2.2. So the other thing I actually forgot to do is also add a comma at the end of this, just so it continues adding things in the proper list structure. So I'll clear all this stuff out off screen, and then I'll show you how to actually work within one of the functions that actually works. Okay, so earlier we changed our scroll up key to print. So if you want to then go and change the argument for it, we can come over to this last section and then change this from, say, -1 to -5, and then it will scroll 5 lines at a time. So to actually work out what each of these different arguments do and what arguments you need to actually pass in, there's not really a good way to do it. You're just gonna have to pretty much experiment with the code that's there, because most of it isn't documented, so there's not really any better way to do it. I'm obviously going to continue doing videos like this, but but I'm not going to be doing videos on every single patch. So if you want to do some stuff that I haven't done, then go and have fun learning it, I guess. So the last thing that I want, actually there's a couple of last things I wanted to mention. So there's also a mapping for having no mask, and that is xk no mod. That wasn't shown in our mod map program that we used earlier because that's technically not a mask, it's the lack of a mask, but they had to give it a value within st. And also, if you haven't worked with C before, you can also define some more macros up here. So let's say we want to, it's not really useful, but we could rename the macro for shift. So if we want to just call it shift or something, then we can put a shift mask here. So now when we actually use this, instead of saying shift mask, we can just refer to it as shift. So that in itself isn't too useful, but like with this term mod here, that you can actually then combine them so you can have multiple mask keys at the same time. So say you want to do your mod key and shift, for example, or you want to do control and your mod key, then you can do that with macros. So it turns out those commands I have at the top are actually important for something, so don't comment them out, I guess. So we're going to have to pick a different key to work from, so I guess we'll change that to something like 8. Yeah, that'll work. So yeah, also just make sure that if you're using the scroll up, you're also setting this to a positive number, not a negative number. I don't know how I had a negative number in there. Anyway, we will now recompile that, and it should work now. So uninstall that, and reinstall that, and now that that is done, when we press Alt and 8, we now scroll up. So I think that is pretty much everything for this video. So hopefully you now actually have some understanding of how bindings actually work within ST. It took me a while to work it out myself, and I guess I'm still working it out now because I didn't realize that those were actually important. So if you like this video, remember to smash that like button and leave me a comment down below to let me know what you think. And if you want to see more ST videos, let me know because I've got a couple of things left, but I don't have much. So if you got anything you want me to try out, then let me know and I'll give it a shot. And if you want to see those videos when they come out, remember to subscribe and ding the little bell icon down below because it'll really help the channel out. And up on that corner, there will be the playlist that this video is in, so go check that out if you want to see random other ST videos. And also, don't forget to go follow my Twitter and my Mastodon if you actually want to get video updates. So I think that's pretty much everything for me, and I'm out.